bottom of the hour, depending on what part of the country you're in. Might be 12:30, might be something else. Welcome. We're looking forward to today's topic and sharing it with you. Acumatica, this is part 2 in our 3-part where we're introducing Acumatica. We are excited about this partnership and our move to add Acumatica, and I want to emphasize add. This is an amazing product. We think you're going to be super surprised and super excited by what you see. I also want to wholeheartedly say Sage 100 Contractor is and has been an amazing product for so many of our clients and is a perfect fit for them. For others of you, things are changing, your PM's needs are changing, and it's good to stay informed with some of the changing options that are out there for ERP systems and specifically construction additions. So this is our opportunity to educate you a little bit, tell you what we've learned. We did a long research, 2 years, in looking through what's out there, evaluating not only the software, but the platform, the company behind it, who owns it, their plans for the future, their ratings for customer support and those kinds of things. And we were excited to ultimately choose Acumatica and specifically the Construction Edition for our clients that would be a good fit for this. And for the rest of you, this will be interesting and a confirmation that you are in the right place. And maybe 3 years from now, that is another conversation. You might look at it at that time. So for now, what I'd like to do is let you know that you are all going to be muted. We love you, but you're muted. Then after Mike and Chris do their presentation, we will go ahead and take Q&A. Chris will kind of moderate the questions there. We'll bring those up and we'll cover as much as we can. During the presentation, we'll be off camera so that you can see the full screen of what Mike is sharing. Some of the pages have quite a bit of information on them, so we want to be sure you can see the whole thing. And we'll come back on for the conversation at the end. So Mike, if you are all set, I'm just going to start with our agenda here. And let me make sure that that's coming up. There we go. All right, here we are. Here are the 3 of us. Mike Duberstein is with Pre-Sales Leader. He's a senior solution engineer. And it turns out that we had met for a completely different reason a couple years ago, had a great conversation. And when I met him again last year or whatever it was, wait a minute, we have met. So Mike's been in the construction space and ERP space for quite a while, and we're excited to have him with us. And then many of you know Chris. Okay, so here's the agenda. We're going to recap briefly just part 1 of the Acumatica Construction. What is it? That's mostly just sharing a few of those screens for you. This product, the Construction Edition, includes all the basics you're used to, and that's just a start. So we want to confirm that you have what you already have if you look at this product. Project Manager visibility and restrictions. Many of you ask, we want our project managers to have great visibility and easy access, but we want to restrict what they have access to. That can be done. Built-in options for project communication. We'll cover some billing options. In addition to that, cost to complete, work in progress, also known as over/under billing. And yes, you can keep your payroll in-house. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn my screen off. And Mike, it is all yours.
Fantastic. Well, given that, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and you guys should be seeing Acumatica now. So what my plan is just to sort of walk you through the project screen and compare what you're used to with Sage 100 to what we have in Acumatica. I think the theme and what I hope you guys will feel after we get through this is that you won't be missing anything within Acumatica that you have today in Sage 100 Contractor. And in fact, there's some quality of life features and additional things that I think are critical that Acumatica provides on top of the functionality that you're already used to. So my plan is just to sort of methodically, that's the word I want, walk through all of the tabs that are on this project screen and kind of describe the impact of them for the construction company. And by the time we're done, hopefully my goal would be that you're thoroughly convinced that this is built for construction and is a suitable replacement for what you're used to within Sage 100 Contractor. So With that said, this is the project hub. And having all of this in one place is really the theme of what we're going to see today. Now, the summary screen is normally something that I would breeze past in a situation like this, but there's some key things that I think are different than what you guys might be used to with Sage 100 Contractor. And that is like there's configuration options here. It's not just grabbing information like the architect or the project manager, although certainly those things are present as well. But you've got immediately things like I want to be able to manage retainage in a more robust way. We see it more and more where a subcontractor is going to have the retainage held at 10% until 50% complete, and then have that retainage dropped or reduced to 5. Acumatica can handle that, and you'll see that right here on the summary screen. And so, having the ability to make those types of robust changes project by project is something that Acumatica affords you. Here's where I can define what my work breakdown structure is. One of the things that's really cool about Acumatica is that each project can have its own unique work breakdown structure. If you need certain levels of detail for one project that you don't need for another, it's very easy to change that, save it as templates, use those templates as the easy way to set up those projects, and then, bill and job cost based on the structure that you need for that specific project. And then from a project group perspective, it allows me to say, hey, maybe I'm working on a university campus and I've got 5 buildings that I'm working on. I can actually lump all of this into like the campus project group and then do progress reporting on the whole, group of projects to see how my percentage of completion is across the whole portfolio. And so that project group is a really cool thing for lumping everything together. Scrolling down a little bit here, you'll see that there are some really cool things that I'll dive into a little bit more deeply in terms of the change order workflow. Spoiler alert, there's some change request functionality that I think will be an enhancement compared to what you guys are used to today, but you've got the option for how change orders are handled here at the summary level. You can choose if you want to have like a summary level AIA or a more detailed one with a roll up to a higher level here at this level, and can toggle mid-active project if you need to have it in one, format for one billing and then in detail for another. You can put all kinds of cool things here in place, like allocation rules, which can fully burden a job and mark up anything that hits a certain cost type or account group with a formula that you put in place. You have the ability to establish billing rules at the top level and then modify them elsewhere, and can really just kind of define visibility even module by module. Is this project available to be billed from an AR perspective, or is it just an internal project or something like that, right? So there's a lot of configuration options even at this summary level. And you'll see with employees and equipment, we even have the ability to restrict those to this individual project. A lot of people look at a employees tab like this and think, oh, well, this is how you assign an employee to say that they're working on this project. And sure, you can use it that way, but this is actually like a really cool permissioning thing that says, if I select this checkbox to restrict employees or equipment, the employees that are not included on this will not have visibility into this project, and equipment that is not on this project won't be able to have their time posted against the project. So a lot of very robust options here just within this one screen. Now, as I move further down the line, this is the tasks tab within Acumatica's projects. So this is my work breakdown structure and the way that I break down my cost. And I have the ability to have that be present both on my schedule of values, which is what Acumatica calls the revenue budget, as well as the cost budget as well, which could be separate if you want it to be, or married together if you want it to be as well. This would be what you all would think of as phases within Sage 100 Contractor. And we have the ability to carry that forward and break down your projects into these types of divisions and get more granular within the revenue budget and the cost budget.
Yeah, these these are what a lot of people think of as phases, but think of like phases with an upgrade, a little more detailed tracking, a little bit more flexibility on those. So the Sage 100 Contractor 100 contractor phases with a few extra features and bells and whistles that allow you to report on a little bit better.
Yeah, and as you can see, I called out the billing rule at the project level, but even here at the phase level, you can change the billing rule or allocation rule. So if you have like a change order you want to put at the bottom here, and that's a T&M change order, you have the ability to do that at this level and sort of override what's typical for the project for a unique phase of the project. This is also really useful from a multi-entity perspective. If you have a company within your portfolio that then subs out work for another company, you can choose at the phase level which company owns the scope. And because Acumatica does have multi-entity, multi-branch structure, we can actually use this as the driver to say we want all costs and revenue to flow through to this entity, even though it's on this project, which is mostly owned by this other one. So there's some really cool intercompany kind of behind the scenes things that we can do here as well. Now, the revenue budget is really the schedule of values or the contract, if you will, for the project. And having a unique revenue budget is, from my understanding, something that's unique to Acumatica compared to Sage 100 Contractor. You do have a cost budget within Sage 100 Contractor, but to have a revenue budget really on the same screen within the project record where you can say what your original contract is, what change orders have come through or are pending, and what the current contract value is, all right here on this one screen, is one thing that Acumatica affords you. And again, I don't have to hop around to like a contracts module or anything. Like I'm really on the same screen that I've been on the entire time. And we'll see as we get into billing here in a little bit. This is also the place that I can go and run my billing. And there's some really cool things that you can do there as well. So having this embedded right here is a really nice feature too. But as I go further into the cost budget, you can see the same level of, I've got my phases here, but then the cost codes within them with account groups, and I can see a whole bunch of information that's present here in terms of what did I budget, what are my actuals, what change orders are coming through, what have I bought out for my commitments, what are my most recent projected costs at completion, and all of that good stuff. And then what I can do is use this as a way to sort of see where I'm at from a project perspective by sorting and filtering using my performance. So if I want to see my worst performing cost code, you could see that all of a sudden I'm able to see that. And now I could drill into this and see what's causing mobilization to be over budget. And by the way, the amount of detail that we're seeing here, all of these different columns are totally configurable as well. So like Chris, I know you're kind of a details guy, maybe you would want to go through and add all of these checkboxes that are not present for me. And then because I, don't need as much information, I'd go and uncheck a whole bunch of other stuff. We wouldn't be affecting each other's views. That's one of the really nice features. And that's pervasive across the whole system.
So I can, as a PM, I can log in, just go to my job, and I can see all this information. I don't even have to run a report.
Yeah, exactly. And when I drilled in on
Wow.
that transaction, it takes me to the project transactions, right? No report needed. You can see there's a new yacht that someone tried to sneak through on this cost code. And then I can drill in and see the backup in this case. I think we did this joke the last webinar. So if you guys are on, again, I apologize for y'all having to sit through a repeat. But if anyone's new, hopefully you liked this. The other thing I wanted to highlight, though, is besides this being like an AP bill, right, I can back this out and say, I don't care about the cost code. I don't really care about the cost task. What I want to see is all the labor that's been posted against this project. And you can see I can use these filtering and selection criteria to see all that information. And one thing that's really cool is that because Acumatica's payroll is built in and you have the option of doing it in-house, you can have detailed burden here where I can see tax information, healthcare, benefit expense, all of that good stuff. And of course, without getting too far into the weeds, I can limit the amount of detail that's here or revoke the employee names that you see here so that like not your average person can log in and see this information. But rather than just leaving it as a goofy form and throwing cash up in front of the yacht, I wanted you all to see that the detail that you can get as you drill into labor really is one of the big advantages to doing payroll out of the box in Acumatica. And again, to Chris's point, no reports being run yet. And I don't even really plan to run any reports until like much later on in the demo, but we're still going to have a really good idea of where this project's at, irregardless of the fact that I'm not running any reports. Okay, so beyond the cost budget, the balances tab is a really, really nice feature here as well. Think of this really as like a digest for your project overall. So what this is going to do is essentially be like a project summary that can show almost like a trial balance, if you will, at this project level. What's my income versus my expense? What's been budgeted versus what changes have been made and actually been approved? What's been bought out, again, in the case of the expenses, and you know, what's the variance and the performance percentage. And just like you saw in the cost budget, I could drill in and view transactions, or if I wanted to see, well, you know, why is it that my subcontract is at 68% when much else is well over budget, I can actually drill in and view the commitments from here as well. So there's multiple different paths to kind of take here. Again, more sorting and filtering I could do to say, let's only look at the ones that are open. And now I've got a clear view of all my open subcontracts, all the information about that, and could drill in further to that from here. So taking the next step from this screen is really one of the huge advantages. It's not just presenting this data. It's not just a place where you set this stuff up, but it really can be the place that you go and actively manage your projects and investigate things that might seem off or that you want to get the full story on. By the way, you know, kind of a little thing, right? But like you saw how I could attach back up to the AP bill, and that was the foreman. But I could go in here and update something here too as a record note and say, might have found fraud. And that way, now anytime someone logs into this project screen, they could see that there's a note here, drill into it and view it, right? So it's not just that I can see information, but I can sort of like date stamp and put notes to the things that I found so that the next person that finds that has a story that accompanies what they find without having to, you know, now they have the data, but what's the context? The system will allow for you to give the context as well. But that's it. Really, all that you can do is set up the budget, and then everything else you've got to do elsewhere. No, I'm just kidding. Commitments is the next thing that you can do from here. So you don't have to go into like purchases or payables to create a PO or a subcontract. I could go in right from here and say, all right, I need to create a subcontract. And that's going to pop open a new tab, retaining the tab of the project that I was on here so that I don't have like a clumsy interface that I have to, you know, then work magic to get back to the project. And I can start going in and buying out this subcontract, pick my vendor, select the project item from my budget. And, you know, even if I wanted to filter by, here's the project that we're working on, but I want to filter by the items that I've budgeted for being a subcontract, I could very easily go and say, here's the line item I'm adding to this subcontract, fill out the details, describe the scope, and then actually print a subcontract from here as well. Once I'm done with that, exit and go back, and you'll see all the subcontracts and purchase orders are going to live here within this commitment screen with attachments and notes and all of those good things that you can see, and the implication of those present in all of the other tabs, the cost budget and the balances. So setup is easy of the projects, setup is easy for the commitments, and all that information aggregates in one place so that it's easy for you to be able to see the impact of those commitments in the same place as well. Now, change orders and change requests are the next really kind of big topic that's here. And so it's very easy for me to go in and create a change order. And again, as I click create change order, that's going to go ahead and take me into another screen. The UI is very consistent from screen to screen. And that's one of the things that's super nice is, and I'm used to like kind of some other products that are not this way, but you'd have to learn, okay, what's the interface for running a PO and what's the interface for running an AP bill and setting up a project. But because the interface is so similar from screen to screen, it just makes the ramp time a little bit easier as people are learning, you know, how to use the software for their day jobs. So anyways, what's really cool about this is that as I go to do a change order, I can use the class here to say, this is a budget mod, right? So I'll go in and say, this is a budget modification cost only, and just watch these change requests in budget revenue. As I click that, it gets rid of them, right? So now I can't affect a commitment. I can't affect the schedule of values. I can't affect or pull in any change requests, but I can go in and add budget lines and move money from one line to another, or increase or decrease things, right? So I can use the change order classes and have that sort of force the user to enter it in a really detailed way in order for this information to have integrity and nothing to be messed up. So that can really kind of assist with the ease of entry. And then as I go in and say, well, you know what, this is actually an internal change order, now that brings back a couple other tabs where I can add my subcontracts and purchase orders to this and say I need to make changes from either a quantity or an amount perspective. And I also have the ability to go in and do that with the original contract or select change requests as well.
So the one you did just before this, Mike, then what comes to my mind is I often get questions and do additional training on how to use up allowances. And so it's something where you really are taking money from one cost code, maybe an allowance code, and divvying it up now that the work has been identified and needs to be done. So it sounds like that would allow you to do that without necessarily impacting your list of change orders. This is internal. We're using up an allowance.
Yep.
Or something similar. Okay.
Absolutely. And Chris and I had a really fun one a couple of weeks ago with another unique change order use case where there was some cost savings and tax implications for the owner buying material direct. And so what they needed to do was, because they knew that this was going to happen, they needed that to affect their budget and their WIP report accordingly. And so we were able to do a direct material purchase change order to reduce the schedule of values and the cost budget, but then like take it off of hold and not have it be pending once that went into effect and they actually purchased that material. So you can use, because Acumatica is so flexible, like we can use these different things to solve for different use cases. And what I mean by that is, you know, none of these, like this doesn't come out of the box, this direct material purchase, but I was able to create a new change order classification that behaved a unique way for their specific need. And so we have some really flexible tools that we are able to use to be able to adjust for specific needs. And, you know, fortunately for everyone on the call, if you guys do use Acumatica, you'll be dealing with much smarter people than me that will be able to use these very flexible tools to solve for your unique business cases. Now, the other thing that's really cool is that we actually do have change request functionality here within Acumatica. The way that this works is I go back to this project screen. As you can see, I've got a catalog or a list of all of my change requests that I've compiled over, you know, a period, maybe a month. I can also go and look at all of my change events across all projects. That's one thing, while we're kind of focusing on the theme of looking at one individual project, I don't want you to get the impression that, well, you have to go into the project to look at your change events, or you have to go into the project to look at all your subcontracts. All of these transaction screens, profiles, and inquiry screens will show you stuff related to all of your projects or all your project managers' projects. And it will allow you to sort of manage that in a consolidated place if you wanted to see, you know, what are all of my change events related to all of my projects, as opposed to just the ones that are related to this project. So you could see that's what this is in this case. But as I've done for this individual project, I'm starting to create change requests that, you know, at the end of the month, I'm going to bring to the GC. And then I'm going to choose the change requests that they want me to include in this change order, add it to this change order and close it. And now that will actually add to my contract and my cost budget right from there. So you've got a true change request to change order workflow, and it's a many-to-one relationship where you can have as many change requests as you want on here, add it to your change order, and then process it from there. Okay, so beyond those types of things, which hopefully everyone on the call would agree is definitely construction specific, there's some other things that are not construction specific, but are very useful features that are present in all screens in Acumatica. And these are all the activities that you can have. So what I have the ability to do here is, create different types of activities. So here's the ones that are kind of default out of the box. But if I need to create a different type of activity, I have the ability to do that. And I could go in here and say, I had a phone call with the owner who is asking about something that they want me to scope from a change order perspective. So you can sort of CYA, if you will, and create those types of logs here, draw that information and report on it by type, put in change order request information, attach photos and add notes here, do all kinds of cool formatting. Owner wants a change, and then use this to sort of build out the information around this. And so you can use these to just sort of log this type of information. And then if you have someone that takes a vacation and you need to see, well, what was the last activity that had been taken on this project, you could go and look at the activity log for this individual project, or look at all activities across the whole system based on the information that you have access to. Another couple of cool things about this, I can create an email directly from here too. So if I wanted to send an email to an architect or an engineer and ask about a set of plans, or send an email to the owner, I can actually send it ad hoc. You can see it's by default picking up a contact for this project, but I could also go in and say Chris at Syscon and kind of ad hoc send some stuff to him. I can write in the message here, and it's got metadata tagged. So as I send this email, all replies will automatically be stored within this project associated with this email as well. Again, that's great. Vacation, insurance for if Chris were to take a vacation, I could still have access to all his correspondence and filter on that type of stuff as well. The final Go ahead,
Mike,
Chris.
is the only way that I can get those emails into there by creating them from here, or maybe is there any other way I can get them in there?
No, it's a great question. So there is an Outlook and a Gmail add-in. So there's a widget that you can embed in either of those tools that would allow you to be within that email, open up the widget, and then say, I need to associate this email to this project. And that would automatically push in here for you to be able to see.
So when I have to call, and not that this has ever happened to any of our clients, but when they have to call or email every single day to try to get paid for that 6-month-old invoice, you can maybe have a log of that all in here, keeping track of how many times you had to call.
Yes. Yep. That's a great application. Honestly, I was responsible for AR and collections. The first role I ever had at a construction company. And I wouldn't have killed for the functionality to have activities and what I'd done recently, but I would have named for it for sure, because I had to recreate a whole bunch of that stuff in Excel and then refresh the aging and then use this like complicated index match formula to pull the notes forward. And just being able to go in and say, hey, I had that phone call. Let me assign a task for myself or for someone else to follow up on this account. Maybe the project manager's got a better or closer relationship. So I'm going to ask PM to call to collect, right? And then assign that to an owner or work group, put a due date on there and all of that type of stuff. And then that can show up on his dashboard or show up on a show up as a text message or an email for them to be able to see. So really, a lot of systems do a good job of like kind of being a data warehouse, but Acumatica really does allow you to communicate based on the data that's in the system, which is a really nice feature as well. And I take it back. I wouldn't have named for that functionality, but I would have liked it. I'll leave it there. So from going further here, there's a couple additional tabs. And by the way, if anyone is on the call looking at this and saying, wow, there's like way more tabs than I would need, Acumatica's new user interface, which is actually the UI that we're looking at, is in beta right now, but it will be out for public consumption this upcoming release in September. And beyond just having the pretty rounded corners, which is nice, it allows me to go in and say, let me actually configure this screen and remove the equipment tab, because we don't charge, we don't job cost equipment, or remove the contacts tab or approvals or whatever. You can see that's what I've done with the unit locals in this case. So you do have the ability to go in and have these tabs be modified, reordered, and that can make it easier for you to kind of adopt the system when you're able to blow away any field or tab that isn't relevant to your business case. So just keep that in mind if you're looking at this and saying, this might be more than I would need. We can tailor the system to account for that. All right, so in addition to that, I do have the ability to go in and look at what I think would be a surprising thing for us to look at in a demo, which is the mailing and printing tab. I'm sure some of you are saying, well, what's so interesting about that? That's what I thought too, until someone actually showed me this, that I actually have the ability to go into my project, which could pull from a template and say, for this invoice, we need to use a different form, or for this change order or change request, we need to use a different form. So I can modify the forms, select the one that I want to use in this case, actually outline the recipients that would be that I would be using for this particular form, and say, yeah, this is going to be a project contact that I want to CC or BCC, or I want in a different format. And you can see that's why when I went to go actually send an email from the activities tab, it defaulted to that one project contact, because you can establish the defaults here, have a huge laundry list of who gets CC'd directly from the system. And then also, like, as I mentioned before, see all of the emails that have been sent out regarding this project automatically sort of stored in this activities tab. But if you have like different invoice or change order format needs, we can accommodate that without it really being painful using this surprisingly cool mailing and printing tab, if you will. Now, another thing that I don't think wins any sizzle awards, but that would have been a real big time saver for me, is the compliance tab. I used to have to manage this through an Excel file. And so, what that would mean is anytime I'd have a couple of minutes, I'd open up that Excel file, look at the vendors that, had upcoming expiring certificates of liability insurance, and then I'd call them and email them and usually get voicemail and they wouldn't follow up with me. And what's really cool about this is you can see I've got expiration dates in here, which could force you to, not be able to pay, or warn you to not be able to pay these subcontractors or these vendors if they don't give you the updated certificates. But I could also send automated follow-ups to them asking for their certificate of liability insurance and all of that through a tool called Business Events, which can automate that follow-up on your behalf. Really, something to chew on is anytime you can think of a repeatable thing. If this data condition is met, if this schedule, on this date, do these things, Acumatica can actually automate that on your behalf. So it can make AR collections, to Chris's point earlier, or certificate of liability compliance, or, even updating a project manager if a cost code goes over budget, all automated. And so if you can think of anything repeatable, Acumatica can really automate that. And it can surface that information in a pretty useful way. And so you could have like, here's the vendors that are not allowed on site because of the fact that they've got expired compliance. So it's not just that the AP person would have this information and would be forced to not pay, but this could go all the way to the top from like a project management perspective and allow them to, see who they shouldn't allow on site until they get an updated certificate of liability insurance or a lien waiver that's been executed and signed.
So you're saying that I would be able to see that potentially see that short list of vendors that are not allowed. I'd love that, not allowed on site because we're missing stuff. So I'd be able to see that even if they weren't necessarily associated with my job, if we gave permissions. Yeah,
totally. Absolutely you would. Yep. And whatever data you'd want surfaced by role, we can absolutely allow for that. If it's not like project specific compliance and they're out of compliance and haven't given it to you, you could surface that to all project managers. It doesn't have to be project specific.
Well, and that would make sense because often we have some favorite vendors we like to use probably across projects. And it would be good to know if somebody's at risk, especially if I'm about to start a project and I'm counting on that sub. So then maybe I can make that call. That's interesting.
Yep. And by the way, so you can go in and enter a new certificate of liability insurance or update this here, but there's a whole compliance hub. And when you enter it at the project level, it actually pre-fills the compliance management screen for you as well. Same with the vendor record, there's a compliance tab there. Same with the subcontract. So at any level, if you enter compliance specific information there, that will go into this compliance management hub, so it can be managed centrally. You don't have to, again, manage that project by project. In addition to that, though, so I actually have project contacts that I can create here. Can say who needs to be receiving, various different types of communication, and can update, multiple different contacts, not just one here related to the project. And I can define the approval maps here as well and see who is assigned to various different types of things, whether that's a change order or whether that's subcontracts, or if that's a pencil copy or a pro forma invoice that you send out, which is actually where we're headed next. So all this can be centralized here, and I can go further than that and create side panels to view even more additional things within the system here. So if you guys are using within Sage 100 Contractor, the document control module, if anyone's using that, we have that very similar functionality here in the construction project management module. And I can link those here as a side panel to see what are the drawing logs that I have for this particular project, what issues have arisen, what RFIs are open, even look at the customer information or project transaction details. So you can use these side panels to even kind of create additional tabs to show, to really make this the one-stop shop for whoever is logging into the system that wants to use this screen. Okay. Now, before I go into billing, one thing to be clear about is, and I know we're going to discuss this in kind of the next webinar with integrated solutions, but there is, while all this information resides here in Acumatica, there's a ton of project management specific solutions that integrate with Acumatica. So the way that this would look is if you're using a Procore or a job planner or an Autodesk build, right? Or a red team, for example, you'd have all of the transactions that come from there, your subcontracts, your change orders, all of that would flow in from those project management tools into the project record, and it would look like you have a ghost PM that's in the system actually entering these records. So if you're looking at this and saying, well, this is great, but we don't want a PM entering a change order in this system, you're not alone. We hear that pretty often. And if that's the case, and you've got a dedicated project management solution, odds are it's integrated with Acumatica, and you would see the data here in the same way that it's rendered now without any duplicate entry.
The other thing that makes me think of, Mike, is sometimes some clients have said they really would like the PMs to put in the change orders because they're the one who has the information at that time, but they want a mechanism to check them. And I know we've seen a couple screens you've shown already so far today that have the words remove hold or something similar. So it sounds like there's some workflows and maybe even some notifications if they wanted to go ahead and allow the PMs to do this and still have some control and double checks in place.
Yeah, totally. Yep, the on hold status is definitely something that you could use to trigger that. I could remove the hold here, and that's going to release this one. But here's the other kind of critical stage. There's a couple of different stops. This has an approval map associated with it, so it's now in a pending approval state, which critically does not mean that it's lost in the ether for those that this is not assigned to. But by the way, I can see who that's assigned to here and the status of that. So if this is multi-different step, you could see whose desk this is on. But that said, you do have the ability to limit, before this actually becomes a law and needs to be reversed or put on hold again to be adjusted, you can have it, or goes out to the customer or something like that, right? You have the ability to put this in a approval state, which can't be overridden. Like for me, I use Acumatica to submit expense receipts, and I just submitted one for a flight that I'm going to be taking, and I put it in, and every time I try, I just hit approve, because I try to move things along and it says, hey, you can't approve it, you big dummy. This is someone else has to approve it, right? So it does take on that state. You can still see the record from there, and then it'll be able to be approved before it actually does go into effect. So yes, whether it's on hold or using the approval map capability, we've got a couple of different stops before this then affects the project in a significant way. All right, so kind of circling back to where we started here, the revenue budget, which is your schedule of values, is also the place where you go ahead and fill out your pay application. So I can go in here and say, hey, I'm instead of 75% complete, I'm 100% complete, and we're 75% complete with finishes and 50% on specialties, and that will give me a pending invoice amount that I can then run project billing on directly from here. So when I run project billing, if I've got the pencil copy or a pro forma invoice associated with this, it will actually create that. I can then send that out to the customer that I'm working with, whether that's the GC or an end customer, and then make revisions to that from here. I also have the ability to print AIA directly from here as well, and you'll see that here in a second. So this is going to populate a pro forma invoice. And when I print the AIA, it will actually bring this down onto my continuation sheet. But you can see here at the G702 level, the summary, and then the continuation sheet with what's been billed by each of these schedule of value line items. This could be integrated with DocuSign or Adobe Sign as well. So if you wanted to have this sent out for execution, we could actually have that happen and then a signed executed copy be saved here within the system, which could then convert it to an AR invoice at that point.
So Shannon asked earlier, actually, do they print AIAs? And it looks like they sure do. And can you also do some different versions? So an AIA, a G706, CMA edition, which I'm not familiar with that last one, but can you do different versions of invoices when you need them?
So we would have to, we'd have to look at those requirements. I'm also not familiar with, especially the CMA, and honestly, myself as a big dummy, I don't know if I've heard of a G706 either. But all that this is it's just a form that is pulling data from within the system. So as long as those forms would need that type of data, like we could make a revision, add a sheet behind this for the G706 or the CMA, provided that it would rely on data that's coming from the system. So it'd be a custom report, but not a heavy lift at all.
Great.
Okay. By the way, go ahead, Chris.
And can you kind of change how it's summarized differently on the billing?
Yeah. Yep. So here at this, I'm doing summary level. Detail would allow me. Detail wouldn't change anything here. Detail changes something if I've got like a task and then like subtask structure on the revenue budget. When I select summary, it would roll it up to the task level. When I go detail, it would show it at that cost code level. Now keep in mind, it wouldn't be like true cost codes, right? Like I can repurpose that to be the schedule of values that you would want to be, especially from a description perspective. And that can show just additional detail that would roll up into the task level if you chose to do the detailed version there.
Great.
Okay, the other thing that is really cool is the calculate feature. So I went in and hit, here's the amount that I'm completing for a given period. But with the newest release that Acumatica came out with, they actually have this, let's see, they actually have this functionality to include and remove from project billing. Let me actually put this right back on hold. And what this will do is it will look at the transactions that have hit your cost budget and then actually say, how much do I need to bill from a progress perspective as I go in and say, let's include that in progress billing. So here it's now saying I need to bill 25% and 31%, and I can go in and override this and add, 5% to this and make adjustments and all of that type of stuff, right? So you can use the cost against the project as your basis for progress billing, which in theory would mean that you would never be underbilled in that case. All right. In addition to all this good stuff, the WIP report and cost projections that would flow into them come out of the box as well. So this, I have a button that I can click from the project screen that can take me directly to this workshop, the Let's Work screen. But let's say that I want to go and create a monthly projection for that Williams Estate project. Well, at the detailed level, I can load all those lines and say, for project management, I happen to know that our cost to complete is going to be $15,000, which can affect my margin and over under billing. By the way, I can include potential change orders in these calculations, and then remove hold, and this can be factored into your WIP. But if I'm a higher volume company, oftentimes with folks that are running, tens, if not hundreds of projects, updating their schedule, their cost budget projections to this level isn't really all that feasible. And so what they want to do instead is say, you know what, I just want my PMs to go in and update by account group and say how much labor is needed to complete this project, how much material, sub, other, and you can define what these account groups are. And when I go in at a summary level and say, cost to complete is $15,000 in labor, I can then use that as the basis for my WIP report by going in and saying, let's use the cost projection as the basis for the WIP as opposed to the cost budget. This can go through an approval map, by the way, so that your, a CFO could make adjustments to it before it ever does kind of go into effect. And then it will actually run a WIP with, all the stuff that you'd want to see, your contract amounts, estimated cost, commitment, projections, actuals, and over under billings. Now, hot off the press is something that's coming in the next release in September that I just cannot wait to get my hands on, is the WIP worksheet that will actually not be a report, but will be a worksheet where you have the WIP report in a place where you could then make an adjustment. So like if I'm a CFO that knows that a certain PM might be a little bit like overeager and thinking that they're going to make certain margin on a project, I can kind of bring them back to reality and say, you know what, 20% margin on this project, and use the cost projection as the basis that I then mark up and kind of sandbag, if you will, that then gets factored in and automatically posts to your journal entry to make those adjustments. So Acumatica is continuing to iterate and improve the functionality from a construction perspective, not just saying, yeah, like look at this cool WIP, but saying, why don't we automate your WIP adjustment and WIP schedule for you, and give you all the tools that you're needing to use anyways, which is better than having to make these adjustments just by looking at a report, and making adjustments as you do the journal entries.
Oh, it's pretty incredible. Can you go back to that cost projections again and maybe group that by cost code?
Sure. Yep, absolutely.
So for those of you that are using Syscon's cost to complete, we have the cost complete Excel that many of our clients have got on. It kind of looks a lot like this, being able to plug in some values and save it, but this is built right into the software. So it's a really nice, cohesive, going to the same place, which is of course web browsers, so they can do it from anywhere, getting that cost complete projections right in Acumatica natively.
Yep, absolutely.
I guess I'd just add to that one of the other features that's super important for many of the clients that are using our custom version that integrates with 100 Contractor is they want the feedback from the PMs, but the owner who's doing the final look at the WIP, that kind of thing, he wants to be able to see, of course, but then also make those adjustments like you were talking about, Mike, because ultimately he's got other people, he or she have other people they're responsible to report to.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And that way you can see the adjustments made at those different stops too, right? It's not in the current iteration, the CFO needs to make the adjustments to this screen, which is the same one that the PM's doing, but in the newest version, this will remain intact. So you've got the variance, and that way you can show, instead of this really cool dashboard that just shows profit and gain and fade by project, I could have one that shows PM versus CFO variance even, right? Which could be a really cool application of having those two different stops.
So that profit gain and fade by project, is that kind of showing the history of the cost complete, so you can see the history of adjustments?
Yeah, totally. Because what this cost projection by date is doing is I can save this and have various different, monthly copies of this projection. And so that timestamps all of those projections by those periods, and I can see, did we pick up any points as the project progressed, and in this case, it's for an individual project. But what I've done with this kind of higher level CFO dashboard is say, yeah, I want to look at my gain and fade by a project manager, and instead of showing it by an individual project, which can tell a pretty volatile story, at this level on the CFO dashboard, now I'm looking by my project manager and seeing where do I start on a project that this person is managing, and where does it end up going for their projects overall. So those are just a couple of I had a little bit of time on my hands and decided I wanted to create a dashboard like this type ideas, and kind of flew by the seat of my pants in setting it up. So we can, if it took me like a half hour to set this stuff up, it'll be a breeze and a very cool thing to create these types of analytics for your own use cases for sure. Now, I will say, kind of last construction specific piece that I hinted at earlier by showing all that burden, is that we do a payroll out of the box, right? And not just payroll, but construction payroll. So I have union locals in here. I actually have certified projects where I can have my different pay rates with prevailing wage and fringes and benefits that are reducing the rate, union dues and all of that from the union locals perspective. Payroll taxes are kept up to date automatically behind the scenes by Symmetry. So you don't have to wait for the software to update in order to make sure that your taxes are up to date. It will automatically in real time keep your taxes up to date. And you can e-file through Atrix using the government reporting capability. So it does make a lot of the payroll things automated, and is a very robust payroll solution. I know Chris and Kathy, and I think Kathy is the queen of payroll when it comes to Sage 100 Contractor. I know that they very thoroughly vetted this as a key part of their evaluation comparing Sage 100 Contractor to Acumatica, and found this to be very comparable in terms of the things that it does well and the fact that it's built for construction. Now, the last kind of thing that I'll say before I wrap it up and hand it over to anyone that's got questions is, where all of this ends up leading is that you can use dashboards, whether it's a high-level executive dashboard like the CFO dashboard that blends a bunch of different modules here in one place for everyone to see, or if it's a project analysis dashboard that will show me my projects by project manager or project type with the vendors on site, my to-dos, change orders that are open, and all of that type of stuff. These dashboards end up surfacing the data that's present in Acumatica in really useful ways. And I can drill into this information as well to get to the source of all of these transactions and take the next step from here. So if the projects are the project hub that really I don't have to leave to manage my projects, the dashboards are even more so that, because I can design them and say, within a click of my homepage, here's everything I'd want to see, and I can filter them by project type, project manager, region, customer, right? I can filter by whatever I want here. So these dashboards end up becoming a really good way to centralize that, not just to report on it, but to see what needs to be done in a given day and keep on top of all of your tasks related to all the projects that you have going on. So with that, I'm going to hand it, unless there's anything from Chris and Kathy, hand it over to you all to run through any questions with the time we have remaining.
One of the things that I was just reminded is we have been building a lot of dashboards for people, usually in Power BI, that integrate back with their software. And you've got some lovely ones here. They're part of Acumatica. But if you could just speak briefly to the Power BI options, because people have done some nice things. They've got some really detailed KPIs, or they're using it to track commissions for their project managers or other things about their jobs. And we've really dialed those in for people. So if you could just speak to that for a minute, Mike.
Totally, yeah. You won't lose anything that Syscon's done for you with Power BI, because Acumatica is out of the box integrated with Power BI. It's actually built on a Microsoft technology stack, which means ultimately that it's got really tight integrations with things like Outlook, as I covered, with Excel, and then also with Power BI. And so we can choose any screen in the system to expose for processing to Power BI, pick up that as a data source, and then blend that with your existing reports or replicate your existing reports with the Acumatica data. So very, very seamless. Power BI well above my pay grade. That's why I trust Chris and Kathy to nail this stuff down, but it does, once they do their magic, it's very embeddable back here where you wouldn't even have to go into a BI environment. You can view the results of those reports right here on the same dashboard as everything else.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, I'll tell you what then. I'll take the screen back, Mike, just for a few minutes so I can bring up this QR code. And Chris, if you want to take this opportunity to look through questions that have come in and decide which one you might want to pull up. So while you're doing that, if you are intrigued and would further like to continue the discussion on Acumatica, part 3 of our 3-part offering here will be in 2 weeks, August 19th, again at 12:30 Central. So you can do your time zone changes in your head here. We're going to be talking about the cool features and the add-ons. So for both the cool features and the add-ons, kind of taking it to that next level. Acumatica has an amazing ecosystem of integrations, and some are actually embedded in Acumatica. Others are add-ons that serve different purposes. So there's some very cool things, and Mike's going to share some of the most popular ones with us, and then some other cool features that are there. So if you are interested, you can point your camera over at this QR code on the right, and we'd love to have you join us for that. We'll keep it again to an hour and just wrap up our time and thoughts here. So with that said, Chris, I don't know if you have a few things in the chat. I know you've been kind of peppering some of the questions into Mike's presentation, but are there some other ones that we want to hit Mike up on?
Yeah, and I would, if any of you have any other questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. So one of them that came through, and I'm curious about this one myself. Do you have unitary billing?
Absolutely, we do. I should have. Let me grab the screen back really quickly, and then I can always show that in a more tailored demo. But yes, that is done here at the revenue budget, where I can choose instead of amount to bill based on quantity. So yes, absolutely, I can do unitary billing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Another.
Time to do unitary billing. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Lots of billing questions today. Can you bill by the amount instead of the percentage? Sounds like that'd be on progress bill.
Absolutely. So instead of going percentage, I'm just going to say my pending invoice amount is right here, right? So completed percent, or it would be quantity. If I was using the unitary, I'd have to go in and enable the bill quantity, but you'd use any of these completed, pending, or pending quantities in order to populate the pending values for that pro forma.
And kind of following that up, the other thing I was thinking about is I know several clients, they will print job cost reports and sometimes budget to actual out of 100 contractor. I think it's like the 41 report budget to actual. And then they'll print that, and then they'll take the progress bill, which is a different screen, roll that forward. So now it's the blank one ready to go. And then the PMs can see the total cost. They can see the schedule values for the way they have to bill, and they can jot in either percentages or dollar amounts based on what they see for their costs. Within Sage, you can also do options and ask it to bring in cost to date into that screen, but you have to have lined it up by cost code. So I'm mentioning those things because in this venue, you would be able to do all of the things I just described without printing the 2 separate reports and having them in front of your PM. And the PM can do it without them being in the middle of your billing software, where many people don't want the PMs necessarily in those accounting screens where you would actually be posting transactions and such. So it sounds like this is kind of the best of both worlds. They can get in and see their own things. They can see the total cost. They can look at the schedule values. They can see what's been submitted before and make that determination either way.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, the next one, I think I will answer this one. Does it integrate with Sage Estimating? So it does not integrate with Sage Estimating, but there is a great way to create an import. So you can take an export file from an export to Excel from Sage Estimating and import that into Acumatica. You can also do that from a couple other platforms. So you can create in many different places, you can create those import. And then there's a number of estimating tools that actually are deeply integrated with Acumatica. And if you want to find out more about them, join us for our next webinar to hear more about those details.
On the 19th, yeah.
All right. Permissions. How do they work? Shannon, that's a great question. And Mike, can you give us a 30-second answer of permissions, which I know is an extremely deep and complicated question?
Yeah, so in 30 seconds, it is out of the box role based, but we can apply that to revoke workspaces. We can apply that to revoke screens. We can even revoke or make fields read only. So extremely robust permissions, and we can, I'm happy to talk about that one off.
Yeah, I think that also could be something a little bit we could touch on the 19th then too. Permissions. I think the biggest takeaway on permissions from Acumatica is they are very robust. It can feel a little overwhelming even, but if you're really thinking it through from high level down, you can be very succinct with who can see what, where, and who's got permissions to do what next. And that's really quite robust in Acumatica. All right. Well, I think we've got through the questions well as best we could with the time that we have. We are right at the bottom of the hour again. I'd like to thank you for joining us. Mike, great job showing us on our whirlwind tour, number 2 in our 3-part series. We'll hope you'll join us next time on the 19th. Let me see if I put that back up here. And if you had other specific questions or something similar, let us know and we'll do our best to get that information over to you. Just give the office a call. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Mike. And for all the rest of you, have a great rest of your week.